In the heart of Abuja, where the sun blazed like a cosmic chef roasting yam on an open flame, the city pulsed with ambition, traffic, and the dreams of millions. The Federal Capital Territory was a glittering paradox, sleek skyscrapers kissing the sky, while roadside hawkers selling roasted corn beneath their shadows. Amid this vibrant chaos, Ruth Okeke worked as a cleaner with a heart as vast as the river Niger in the pristine corridors of Pinnacle Enterprises, a towering glass edifice in Wuse Zone 2. Ruth was no ordinary cleaner. At 32, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that belied her humble station. Her hands, roughened by years of scrubbing floors and wrestling with stubborn stains, told a story of resilience. Her eyes, sharp and brown like polished mahogany, missed nothing, not the smudges on the executive glass doors, not the whispered office gossip, and certainly not the way the world seemed to tilt against people like her. She was a single mother, raising her 10-year-old daughter, Amara, in a one-room apartment in Lubi, where the walls were so thin you could hear your neighbor's dreams. Pinnacle Enterprises was the crown jewel of Nigeria's corporate world, a conglomerate dealing in everything from oil to tech to real estate. Its CEO, Chief Olusegun Bolaji, was a man whose name commanded respect and fear in equal measure. His suits were tailored in London, his wristwatches could buy a small village, and his temper was legendary, hotter than suya left too long on the grill. His only son, Christopher Bolaji, was a 16-year-old whirlwind of privilege and rebellion, a boy who drove a Porsche to school and whose Instagram stories were a montage of yacht parties and sneaker collections. Ruth's life intersected with this world of opulence every morning at 5 a.m., when she arrived at Pinnacle's headquarters to clean before the executives swept in like a parade of peacocks. She scrubbed marble floors until they gleamed like the moon on a clear night, polished mahogany desks, and emptied bins filled with the detritus of corporate excess, half-eaten jollof rice, crumpled coffee cups, and the occasional love note scrawled on a post-it. Her supervisor, Madam Comfort, a woman with a face as stern as a headmistress and a voice that could curdle milk, ruled the cleaning crew with an iron mop. "Ruth, buckle up. This isn't your village," she'd bark, though Ruth worked harder than anyone. One sweltering Tuesday morning, as the harmattan haze hung over Abuja like a jealous ex, Ruth was cleaning the executive lounge on the 25th floor. The lounge was a shrine to excess, leather sofas softer than a politician's promises, a chandelier that sparkled like a galaxy, and a bar stocked with liquors whose names Ruth couldn't pronounce. She was wiping down the glass coffee table when she heard a strange sound, a muffled thud, like a sack of Gary hitting the floor, followed by a gasp that was more animal than human. Her heart skipped. The lounge was supposed to be empty. She dropped her rag and tiptoed toward the sound, her sneakers squeaking faintly on the polished floor. Behind the bar, sprawled like a discarded mannequin, was Christopher Bolaji. His face was pale, his lips tinged blue, and his eyes rolled back in a way that made Ruth's stomach lurch. A syringe lay beside him, its needle glinting under the chandelier's light. A small baggie of white powder was clutched in his hand. "Jesus," Ruth whispered, her voice trembling. She'd seen enough Nollywood films to know what this was, an overdose. Her mind raced like a Danfo on Third Mainland Bridge. Christopher was the CEO's son. If he died on her watch, her life would be over faster than a politician's campaign funds. But she wasn't just thinking about herself. She thought of Amara, her daughter, whose laughter was the only thing that made the world bearable. She thought of Christopher's mother, Chief's wife, whose eyes always seemed sad behind her designer sunglasses. And she thought of the boy before her, who, despite his wealth, looked so small and broken. Ruth sprang into action. She'd taken a first aid course years ago, back when she dreamed of becoming a nurse. She checked Christopher's pulse, weak, erratic. His breathing was shallow, like a fish gasping on dry land. She dragged him out from behind the bar, her skinny arms straining under his weight, and laid him flat. "Don't die on me," she muttered, tilting his head back to clear his airway. She pinched his nose and breathed into his mouth, her own breath shaky but determined. 1, 2, 3 breaths. Nothing. She pressed her palms to his chest, pumping hard, her rhythm steady despite the panic clawing at her insides. Minutes stretched into eternity. Sweat beaded on her forehead, dripping onto Christopher's designer shirt. Just as she thought she'd failed, Christopher gasped, his chest heaving. His eyes fluttered open, confused, then focused on her. "Who, what?" he croaked. "Don't speak." Ruth snapped, her voice sharp but kind. "Or do you want to die? Stay still." She grabbed her phone, an old Techno that took 5 minutes to boot up, and dialed the emergency number she'd memorized for Amara's sake. "Hello? Yes, Pinnacle Enterprises, 25th floor. Come quickly. Someone is down." As she waited for the ambulance, Ruth cleaned up the scene. Not to cover anything up, she wasn't that kind of woman, but to protect Christopher's dignity. She pocketed the syringe and baggie, her hands shaking. She didn't know why she did it. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was the fear of scandal tainting the boy's future. By the time the paramedics arrived, Christopher was conscious but dazed, muttering about a party gone wrong. Ruth stood back, invisible as always, as they whisked him away. She thought that was the end of it. She was wrong. By noon, Pinnacle Enterprises was a hive of whispers. News of Christopher's episode had spread faster than gossip in a market square. The official story was that he'd had a medical emergency, but the cleaners, drivers, and security guards knew better. Abuja's elite had a way of burying their scandals under layers of money and influence, but the underbelly of the city always talked. Ruth returned to her duties, her heart heavy. She hadn't told anyone about the syringe or the powder, not even Madame Comfort, who'd been eyeing her suspiciously all morning. "Ruth, what do you know about this Christopher matter?" Comfort asked, her voice low and dangerous. "Me? I don't know anything," Ruth lied, her face a mask of innocence. She wasn't protecting Christopher, she was protecting herself. If Chief Bolaji found out she'd seen his son at his lowest, he'd fire her faster than you could say a word. And she needed this job. Amara's school fees were due, and the landlord was already circling like a hawk. That evening, as Ruth boarded a tricycle back to Luby, her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number: "Meet me at Garki Market, 7 p.m. Come alone. We need to talk about Christopher." Her stomach nodded. Who knew she'd been there? Was it Christopher himself? Or someone else, someone dangerous? She thought of ignoring it, but the words, "we need to talk," carried a weight she couldn't shake. Garki Market at night was a labyrinth of noise and neon. Hawkers shouted prices for everything from watermelons to second-hand phones, while the air smelled of fried fish and diesel fumes. Ruth, still in her cleaner's uniform, navigated the crowd, her eyes darting for threats. She found the meeting spot, a quiet corner near a suya stand where the smoke curled like a dragon's breath. A man waited there, tall and lean, with a face as sharp as a tailor's scissors and eyes that seemed to see through her. He wore a kaftan that screamed money, and his cologne was so strong it could wake a coma patient. "You're Ruth," he said, not asking. "I'm Femi. Christopher's cousin." Ruth's heart thudded. "What do you want?" Femi smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "You saved Christopher's life. That's good. But you saw things you shouldn't have. The family wants to know what you're going to do about it." "Do about what?" Ruth asked, feigning ignorance. Her palms were sweaty, but she stood her ground. "Don't play dumb," Femi said, stepping closer. "The syringe. The powder. You took them. Chief Bolaji doesn't like loose ends." Ruth's mind raced. How did they know? Had someone seen her? She thought of the security cameras in the lounge, the ones she'd forgotten in her panic. "I didn't take anything," she said, her voice steady despite the fear. "I just helped the boy. That's all." Femi studied her, his eyes narrowing. "You're smart. That's dangerous. The family appreciates what you did, but they don't trust you. Keep your mouth shut, and you'll be fine. Talk," and he let the threat hang, heavy as a rain cloud. Ruth nodded, her throat tight. She didn't trust Femi, but she had no choice. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "One more thing. Chief wants to see you tomorrow. 9 a.m. sharp." Her blood ran cold. A meeting with Chief Balaji was like a summons to Aso Rock, either a blessing or a curse, and she doubted it was the former. The next morning, Ruth stood before Chief Balaji's office, her cleaner's uniform starched to perfection. Her headscarf was tied tight, her nerves tighter. The office was a palace of power, a desk the size of a small car, walls lined with awards and photos of chiefs shaking hands with presidents and governors, and a window overlooking Abuja's skyline like a king surveying his kingdom. Chief Balaji was a man whose presence filled the room like egusi soup fills the belly. His head was round and shiny, like a fresh-oiled puff-puff beaten by the hot sun, and his voice rumbled like a generator in a blackout. "Miss Okeke," he began, not looking up from his laptop, "you saved my son's life." Ruth stood straighter, unsure if this was praise or a prelude to something worse. "I just did my job, sir," she said softly. He looked up, his eyes piercing. "Your job is to clean floors, not play doctor. Yet you did." "Why?" She hesitated. "He was in trouble, sir. I couldn't leave him." Chief leaned back, his chair creaking under his weight. "You're loyal. I like that. But loyalty has a price. You saw something you shouldn't have. Christopher's incident is private. Family business. You understand?" "Yes, sir," Ruth said, her heart sinking. She knew where this was going. "I'm grateful," Chief continued, "but I can't have you here, knowing what you know. You're fired, effective immediately. You'll get 3 months' pay and a letter of recommendation. But you leave today." The words hit like a slap. Fired? After saving his son? She wanted to scream, to tell him about the nights she'd stayed late to make his office spotless, about Amara's school fees, about the syringe she'd hidden to protect his family's name. But she saw the steel in his eyes and knew arguing was futile. "Sir," she said, her voice trembling but firm, "I won't say a word about the incident. I swear on my daughter's life." Chief's expression softened, but only for a moment. "I believe you. But this is business. You'll be fine, Ruth. You're a survivor." She left the office, her head high but her heart shattered. As she packed her cleaning supplies, Madame Comfort watched, her stern face unreadable. "You're too good for this place anyway," Comfort muttered, a rare crack in her armor. Ruth smiled weakly, but inside, she was reeling. How would she pay rent? How would she face Amara? Weeks passed, and Ruth's life unraveled like a cheap Ankara cloth. The severance pay was a lifeline, but Abuja was an expensive city, and her savings dwindled faster than ice cream in the sun. She took odd jobs, cleaning houses, washing clothes, but none paid as well as Pinnacle. Amara noticed the strain, her bright eyes dimming with worry. "Mummy, are we going to be okay?" she'd ask, and Ruth would force a smile, saying, "Don't worry. God is on our side." But God seemed to be on vacation. One night, as Ruth sorted through her belongings, she found the syringe and baggie she'd taken from the lounge. She'd meant to destroy them, but in the chaos of her firing, she'd forgotten. Now they sat in her hand, a dangerous secret. She considered flushing them, but something stopped her. A hunch. A whisper of instinct. Her hunch was proven right because just then her phone rang and it was Femi, Christopher's cousin, calling again. "Ruth, you still have it, don't you?" His voice was smooth, but there was an edge to it, like a knife wrapped in silk. "Have what?" she asked, playing dumb again. "Don't waste my time. Meet me at Area 11, tomorrow, 8 p.m. Bring it." The meeting felt like a trap, but Ruth went. Area 11 was quieter than Garki, its streets lined with bars and restaurants catering to Abuja's elite. Femi was waiting in a dimly lit parking lot, leaning against a dark-tilted black car that looked like it cost more than her entire life. He wasn't alone. 2 men stood behind him, their faces hard, their muscles bulging under tight shirts. "You're stubborn," Femi said, his smile cold. "Hand it over." Ruth's heart pounded, but she held her ground. "What do you want it for? Do you know what it is?" Femi's smile vanished. "You're playing a dangerous game, cleaner. That's evidence. Evidence that could ruin Christopher. And Chief. You think you're smart, keeping it? I am not keeping it to cause any trouble, Ruth said, her voice steady. I am only keeping it because I don't trust you. The men behind Femi stepped forward, but he raised a hand. Easy. She's not stupid. He turned to her. You want money? Name your price. I don't want your money, Ruth snapped. I want my job back. I want my life back. Femi laughed, a sound as dry as harmattan wind. You're in no position to bargain. Give me the syringe, or you'll regret it. Ruth's mind raced. She'd come prepared, the syringe hidden in her bag, but she wasn't ready to hand it over. Not yet. She needed leverage, a way to protect herself and Amara. I don't have it here, she lied. It's safe. Somewhere you can't find. Femi's eyes darkened. You're making a mistake, Ruth. Maybe, she said, backing away. But I am not a fool. She turned and ran, her sandals slapping the pavement, her heart in her throat. She didn't look back, but she felt their eyes on her, predatory and unyielding. Ruth knew she was in deep trouble. Femi wasn't just Christopher's cousin, he was a fixer, the kind of man who made problems disappear, whether through money or muscle. She couldn't go to the police, they were as corrupt as the city's traffic lights, blinking red for the highest bidder. She couldn't go to Chief Balaji, he'd already shown her the door. Her only ally was her own wit, sharpened by years of surviving Abuja's hard edges. She confided in her neighbor, Mama Sharon, a buka owner with a laugh as loud as a generator and a heart as big as her pots of egusi soup. Ruth, you are in big trouble, Mama Sharon said, stirring a steaming pot. But you can't run forever. You need a plan. Ruth nodded. She needed more than a plan, she needed a miracle. She decided to confront Christopher himself. If she could get him to talk, to admit what happened, maybe she could negotiate her way out of this mess. She tracked him down through social media, where his posts were a parade of bravado: Christopher at a club in Maitama, Christopher on a yacht in Lagos, Christopher with a new Rolex that could pay her rent for a year. She found him at a car wash in Guarimpa, where he was overseeing the polishing of his Porsche, its curves gleaming like a Nollywood starlet. He was taller than she remembered, his frame lanky but strong. Christopher, she called, her voice cutting through the hum of pressure washers. He turned, startled. Who are you? Ruth. The cleaner. I saved your life. His face paled, but he recovered quickly, forcing a smirk. Oh, yeah. Thanks for that. What do you want? Money? No, Ruth said, stepping closer. I want you to tell your father the truth. Tell him I am not a threat. Tell him to give me my job back. Christopher laughed nervously. You don't get it, do you? My dad doesn't care about truth. He cares about image. You're a nobody. You think he'll listen to you? I think he'll listen to you, Ruth said, her voice low. Because if he doesn't listen, I will talk. And I have evidence. Christopher's smirk vanished. You're bluffing. Try me, she said, her eyes locked on his. For a moment, they stood there, the air thick with tension. Then Christopher's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it, his face tightening. You're making a big mistake, he said, echoing Femi's words. He climbed into his car and sped off, leaving Ruth in a cloud of dust and doubt. The next day, Ruth's world turned upside down. She returned home to find her door ajar, her tiny apartment ransacked. Amara's schoolbooks were scattered, her mattress slashed, her few possessions strewn like confetti. A note was pinned to the wall, written in sharp, angry strokes: give it up, or next time it's not just your house. Ruth's knees buckled as she fought back tears. She clutched Amara, who'd been at Mama Sharon's. She couldn't stay here. She packed a bag and took Amara to Mama Sharon's, who welcomed them with open arms and a plate of jollof rice. You are not fighting this alone, Mama Sharon said. We will find a way. Ruth's way came in the form of an unlikely ally, Kemi, a junior accountant at Pinnacle who had always been kind to the cleaners. Kemi had overheard Femi talking to Chief Bolaji about handling Ruth. Furious at the injustice, Kemi reached out, meeting Ruth at a quiet cafe in Jabi. "You're not safe," Kemi said, her voice low. "Femi's connected. He's got people everywhere. But I know someone who can help." Kemi introduced Ruth to Barrister Nicholas, a lawyer known for taking on cases the powerful wanted buried. Nicholas was a small man with a big presence, his glasses perched on a nose as sharp as his mind. "You have evidence, yes?" he asked, sipping tea that smelled of lemongrass. Ruth hesitated, then pulled the syringe and baggie from her bag. "This." Nicholas's eyes gleamed. "This is leverage. But it's dangerous. You're sure you want to do this?" Ruth thought of Amara, of the ransacked apartment, of the job she'd lost for doing the right thing. "I don't have a choice," she said. With Nicholas's help, Ruth crafted a plan. She wouldn't go public, that would destroy Christopher and bring Chief's wrath down on her. Instead, she'd use the evidence to negotiate, her job back, protection for her and Amara, and a promise that Femi would back off. Nicholas arranged a meeting with Chief Bolaji, not in his office, but at a neutral location, a conference room in a hotel in Maitama. The meeting was tense. Chief sat across from Ruth, his face unreadable. Femi was there, his eyes burning with anger. Christopher was absent, but his presence hung over the room like a storm cloud. Nicholas spoke first, laying out Ruth's demands with the precision of a surgeon. "My client saved your son's life," he said. "She's been punished for it. That ends now." Chief's gaze shifted to Ruth. "You're brave," he said, his voice low. "Or foolish. Why should I trust you?" "Because I am not lying," Ruth said, meeting his eyes. "I don't want your money or your secrets. I just want my life back." After a long silence, Chief nodded. "You'll have your job. And protection. But the evidence, hand it over." Ruth slid the syringe and baggie across the table. Femi reached for them, but Chief stopped him with a look. "This stays with me," Chief said. He turned to Ruth. "You're a good woman, Miss Okeke. Don't make me regret this." Ruth returned to Pinnacle Enterprises, her mop in hand, her head high. The other cleaners welcomed her like a war hero, and even Madam Comfort cracked a smile. Amara's laughter filled their new apartment, a modest two-bedroom in Garki, paid for with a bonus Chief quietly arranged. Femi disappeared from Abuja, rumored to have been sent to manage a failing branch in Port Harcourt, a demotion dressed as a transfer. Christopher, sobered by his brush with death, started visiting a counselor, his Instagram stories replaced with photos of books and sunsets. Chief Bolaji never spoke of the incident again, but he made a point to greet Ruth every morning, a small gesture that felt like a victory. Ruth knew the world hadn't changed. Abuja was still a city of haves and have-nots, of power and betrayal. But she'd carved out a piece of it for herself and Amara, a fragile hope built on courage and cunning. As she scrubbed the floors of Pinnacle Enterprises, she hummed a song her mother used to sing, a melody of resilience that echoed through the gleaming halls. And somewhere, in the shadows of the city, the syringe and baggie sat locked in Chief's safe, a secret that bound them all, a reminder that even the humblest cleaner could shake the foundations of power.